In this video, I'll share with you what to do if your child is anxious, suffering with anxiety. Before we jump in, defining anxiety means that you're worrying a lot, you're fearful. You can do a quick Google search to see what the criteria of anxiety means. You get it. They're anxious and it's having a significant impact on their life, and they don't seem like they're okay. Generally speaking, that's what we as psychologists, that's what we'd say when it means someone is suffering from anxiety. They're not okay because they're so fearful and worried and anxious about so many different things in their life, okay? First thing you're going to want to do, please get some professional help. Get them assessed by a professional, a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a licensed professional counselor, or a licensed therapist, psychotherapist, to really get a good assessment on what their level of anxiety might be or what their level of struggle might be. That might mean seeing a couple of people. And I know it's an expense, but you can do this. I think that you can take them to an emergency room if they're really struggling and get assessed. Get them assessed. That's first and foremost. Okay. Within that assessment and addressing, especially if they have a safety concern or you have a safety concern about them, here's what you can do as a parent. Number one, you have a lot of ability to create an environment where it's difficult to be anxious. What do I mean by that? You're creating a structure in their life that is not salient for anxiety to thrive. I did a video on depression that has these same principles, and they can be applied to this as well. In fact, any kind of struggle that a young person can have, you can use these three principles. The first one is structure. So for example, you are creating an environment, let's call it an emotional environment, where it's hard for anxiety to survive. What does that mean? It means that you are creating a family where people talk about hard things. One way to think about anxiety is that, think of ourselves as like a jar, and emotions are commodities, okay? So inside of this jar of anxiety, there's like hundreds of emotions bouncing all over the place. And when you push down on it, that's when people feel depressed because they have a lot of feelings happening inside, and you just kind of depress all of the commodities away so you don't have to feel them. It doesn't really work because that's why depression feels so terrible, because there's a lot of feelings inside that people aren't addressing. With anxiety, you can't really depress it. You can't push it down because there's so much happening. So what do you want to do? In this metaphor, you want to open the lid. Slowly but surely, let the anatomy of the anxiety, which is a lot of fear, which is a lot of worry about the future and the past. It's a lot of different emotional commodities. Therapeutically, how we work with it is we have people share about what are the things that they're worried about. And then we address the narrative that creates the kind of anxiety. Right? And sometimes there's a physical component as well. There's a lot to say about how you treat anxiety from a lot of different ways and realms and different standpoints. But for you as a parent, you are creating a structure. What does that mean? You're feeding them really healthy food. And I go into this in the video about depression. Okay, so take a look there. You're giving them the opportunity to have healthy food that has them feel good. They're not just eating sugar and fat and fast food and junk food, right? I know you can't control everything that especially a teenager or a young adult eats, but you are creating an environment where the only things that are your home are things going to have them feel good. Fruits, vegetables, whole grains, healthy snacks, those kinds of things, right? Secondly, you're doing as much as you can to create an environment where they sleep well. Now, a lot of people who have anxiety are not sleeping well. It's appropriate to give them sleep supplements or meds even that help them sleep, and encourage them, maybe take their phone away at 10 p.m., right? To have their nervous system just relax, right? Exercise. Get them some exercise. Create an environment where they need to exercise. People that have anxiety often don't do rigorous exercise enough. Things where they sweat, going to the gym and doing a sauna. Man, if they could do a cold shower, what that does to the nervous system, it activates it consciously, but then afterwards you can feel really relaxed. It's not right for everybody. This is I'm one of these people that it has worked for. And by the way, I suffered from anxiety a lot when I was a kid. From about 15 until 21, I was a very anxious person. If I would have been seen by a therapist, I would have been clinically diagnosed as anxious, as having generalized anxiety disorder. So I speak from a little bit of my own experience, not the same as your kids, but I've navigated this myself. And I'm now a thriving, happy monk in the world. And there There you go. Okay, so all that to say, get some exercise. Encourage them, even create a mandate that they're getting exercise 5 days a week. You don't want to do a sport? They don't want to do a sport? Fine. Find a way. What's your proposal, young man, young woman, that you want to do exercise 5 days a week, but you have to do something, or you will not be having a phone, or you will have it for 1 hour a day where you can connect with your friends and I'll take it back again, right? Social engagements, and this is especially for social anxiety. Find ways for them to have opportunities to connect with people that aren't online. I'm actually really supportive of young people having online relationships. They can be really meaningful for people. And it's important to have real life friendships as well and real life relationships. So make them go out of the house or have people over where they see people, and do what you can without rescuing them. Get to that in a second. But creating a structure where they need to see people and interact with people. All right. And the last thing is get them to therapy. Get them in a therapist's office who works with teenagers, who's down to earth, who's chill, who's not going to sit there and just watch the clock tick, wait for them to talk. It's terrible therapy for a teenager, right? And so find someone who's really good at working with young people, who can tolerate not being liked and that brings energy into their life, that inspires them, that lets them open up, that lets them have opinions that, might be offensive to a lot of people. That's just someone that's going to accept them for no matter who they are, what they think, and that they can be vulnerable with, right? Again, our goal in therapy, it's for you to know as a parent, is to get people who are anxious to relax. How do we do that? By them sharing anything they want to share, and their fears and their worries about the future, their own insecurities about themselves in the past, and they just eventually be vulnerable. You want to do that too as a parent, which is a good segue into the second thing you can do, your relationship. The first thing was structure, right? And in that structure, we had eating, sleeping, exercise, school or work, making sure they're going to school or work. They need to. Social engagements and getting help, right? In that structure, let me pause before I go back to relationship. In that structure, you are going to want them to do things even though they're anxious. They'll say to you, but I'm scared or I'm worried. The thing, if I had kids, that I would say all the time is, okay, then be scared and do that thing. Be worried and do that thing. Go to school. Well, I'm worried I'm going to fail. Okay, well, be worried you're going to fail and study, right? Or be worried you're going to fail and go take the test. If you fail, then we'll do something else, okay? But you've got to try. You've got to do it. Actually, a lot of people in the world don't do things because they feel a certain way. Feel how you feel and do the thing. It's so important for us. I do this pretty much every day. There are things I don't want to do, and I do them even though I feel a certain way. And what happens? It's the birthplace of emotional resilience. One of them. It's one of the origin points of emotional resilience, is that you do things when you feel like you don't want to do them. And over time, if you do it consistently, you will become emotionally resilient. You will become an emotionally resilient person. That's what we're after when we're treating anxiety or treating depression. Okay, so that was structure. Thanks for my little detour there. Let's go into relationship. That's the second thing you can do and you can focus on as a principle. Stay connected with them as much as possible. There will probably be a friction that arises in your relationship because you'll be creating a structure and boundaries that have them do what they have to do and need to do and should do, probably not want to do, even though they're anxious and they're fearful and they're worried, okay? So stay connected as much as you can, even though there's that friction. What does that mean? It means that you bend and don't break in the structure. You let them off the hook. You take a mental health day with them and you go to a water park or you go to Six Flags or whatever, take them on roller coasters. Maybe they're too scared to. So then you say, what do you want to do? I'm taking you out of school today. You're not going to school. I'm taking off work. What do you want to do? We're going to do something together. And we're not sitting at home on our phones. We're going out of the house, going somewhere. You want to watch a movie? Great. I'll take you to a movie. It's your day. What do you want to do? What a beautiful thing for a parent to do to a kid. I use this example in the depression video. I learned of a parent who, when I was living in Colorado, told his kid, he's like, hey, you're not going to school today. I'm picking you up. We're going whitewater rafting. The kid was like, what? I have a test. He's like, well, can you make it up? The kid was like, I guess. And he's like, do you want to go? And he's like, yeah. He's like, let's go. Took him out, went whitewater rafting. I saw him at a burrito shop. I mean, what a beautiful thing to do. The kid was just elated. And what a great relationship to have with his parent. That's not enabling or rescuing. That's called being awesome. You do things like that. You take them out of their environment. You surprise them in some days. What a beautiful expression of care that is for the young person. Man, my dad really cares about me. He just took me out of school. I mean, who does that? And then you get to say, but the deal is you have to go to school. I'm not going to do these things for you if you refuse to go to school because you're so anxious, right? I as a parent, you can't do that. Then it becomes problematic, right? So you're focusing on your relationship, right? And here's another key. You're relating to them as a person that is resilient, even if they are not demonstrating that ability right now, right? So for example, they say, I'm really worried about going out with this girl. Your daughter's starting to see a new girl and she's really worried about it, and she's worried about being seen as gay, and she doesn't want to ask her out, and there's a lot of prejudice in her area, whatever it is. One thing that you could say is, I'm really curious how you're going to navigate this. You're going to find some way through this yourself. I can't wait to see what it is. Do you want any of my assistance? No, Dad, you don't know what it's like. Okay, fine. I'm just super curious to see how it goes for you. You've got this, And it might be a bad experience per se in this moment, but I know it's going to be okay in the long run, right? Start to relate to them as someone that can find their way through difficulties, even if it seems like they have lost that ability. And it's not to sound trite or to sound too contrived or that you have to see them if they're really, really struggling. Hold that idea, that possibility, in some ways that reality in your mind, in your constitution, that's who they are, that they can do this and they can find their way through it, even though there's not a lot of evidence for that happening right now. Yeah. So, and again, bend, don't break your structure. I gave the mental health day as an example, but bend on some things. Take them shopping if you want to. Take them out to eat just some junk food every once in a while, right? It's not about rewarding them. It's about doing things that are kind for someone, even when there's not a real compelling reason to, right? So the first thing we talked about was your structure, focusing on your structure and leveraging your structure such that you create an environment that's difficult for anxiety to thrive. One way that we do that is through the relationship. Within the relationship, how does anxiety not thrive in the relationship? Well, you create an emotional environment between you and them where they can tell you anything. And you're not rescuing them. You're not telling them everything's going to be fine. You're like, wow, that sounds hard. That sounds challenging. I understand why you're worried about that. What are you going to do about it? Nothing. Well, that's probably going to make it worse, Having them just vent or share, you don't have to come up with problems. You're not problem solving. You're not coming up with solutions. You're not making them feel better. Let them be anxious and be a guide that helps them be less anxious. You are not you are a consultant. They pay you with their time, right? And so they say, I don't know what to do. And you say, I'm not sure what to do either. Do you want some ideas? No. Okay, fine. Yes, I do. Well, what ideas do you have, right? Empower them to become resilient. These are all different examples of building blocks that you can give them to become more and more emotionally resilient, because that is your goal with anxious young people. Okay, we covered structure, we covered relationship, and the third thing that you can do is focus on you. Do your own personal work. Don't let their anxiety give you crippling anxiety. Oftentimes when young people are struggling, it brings up all of our stuff. I get it. I don't have a kid, but I can understand because I've lived and worked with young people long enough to know how hard it is to be around people that suffer. Now, it's different for a parent, 100%. I bow to you, I pranam to you for what courage and sacrifice it takes to be a parent, and I offer all that I can for that. So inside of this, Focus on yourself. Do your own work. Focus on getting your own help, your own assistance, both professionally and personally. Have a community of people, of other parents, of maybe struggling young people that you can talk to and you can connect with, that you can get ideas from. Make sure you're doing your own personal work, your own therapeutic work with a therapist or a mentor or a coach where you're addressing what's coming up to you. Why? Because if you're really anxious or you're really depressed or you're really frustrated, whatever it is, that will all get in the way of you connecting, one, connecting with your young person, and two, being skilled and having the mindset to create a great strategy. All of what you're doing in terms of parenting is 80% psychology and 20% strategy. If you address the psychology behind finding out a strategy, one, you'll be more clear-minded to come up with a great strategy, and two, great strategies will come to you because of how you've created your mindset. Meaning, address your own psychology, your own mindset first before you go searching for strategies on what to do, or before you start employing different strategies. Because if you are really anxious or depressed or frustrated or worried or anything else that's unhelpful, we could say, or uncomfortable, if you try the strategies, like you try to take them out and go to Six Flags and you're just like constantly anxious and worried the whole day, it's going to suck for them. So work on yourself. Do what you've got to do for yourself to get to a good place before you employ any of these strategies that we've talked about or from anyone else that you've heard from. Okay? So let's summarize. The things that you can do for your anxious young person. One, and always one, get professional help, get professional assistance and have them evaluated, right? Have them see a therapist, a psychiatrist, a psychologist that will help them and give you some information as a parent on how they're doing and what you can do, okay? That's number one. Now, the real number one for you is creating and leveraging a structure that gives anxiety a hard time to foster in, a hard time to survive in. An emotional environment and a logistical environment. Okay, that's structure. Two, focus on your relationship. Leverage your relationship as much as you can. Stay as connected with them as you can and give opportunities for them to connect with you. Do all you can to connect with them. Bend, don't break in your structure and in your relationship. Bending and don't breaking means that you're a person who cares about them and you're willing to throw some of the structure out the window because you care about them so much when it's appropriate, right? And number three, focus on yourself. Probably should have put this first because it's so important, but you'll probably be like, that's not what I'm here for, Giovantas. But I'll squeeze it in here on number three is focus on yourself and do your own personal work. If you finished this video, congratulations. Give a little thumbs up. Leave a comment below. Hit subscribe or give a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video. And if you leave any comments, I'll read them because I'm always looking for information on how to create helpful videos for wonderful parents like you. All my best.